So any endeavor that one has put our time and effort and interest together has a particular benefit and outcome. If they are good undertaking, they would have long-lasting outcome, not just something temporarily enjoyable, but also have long-lasting outcome. A lot of people's way of filling their times are usually to fill up the times to make it reasonably enjoyable for the senses during that hour or two days, whatever, but there hasn't got really much benefit later on. A lot of the deluded sentient beings are usually spending the time doing just that. And if possible to please one of the senses, that will be it. And there will be nothing to grow or learn or thereafter. Any time and resources one give to do that would be usually just gone, finished. That's it. There's no return and reward. But undertaking such as the Dharma, listening and reading and study Dharma in general, and particularly the very texts from which the Buddha, in which all the teachings of Buddha are contained, not some sayings of somebody, but Buddha's own sayings recorded together with great care and cooperation, a lot of resources, energy. This is what we are doing, thankfully. So we should all thank ourselves and for being able to do this. And so we are nowadays also making these teachings directly available through streaming, so that other people in far places and spaces where they cannot access teachings due to lack of centers, due to lack of teachings, due to lack of people who can or wish to teach. Some wish to teach but could not because there are many hindrances of the time, language, and so on. So we are blessed to have these facilities. So with this in mind, we should delight to be here and to be doing these things. I certainly am, and I know all of you will be, because there are a lot of ways people spend their time, and some more committed than others. So most of the things that people do are obligatory duties. They really aren't free to do many things that are really good. And those who are able to make themselves free, and like we call precious human rebirth, is only precious if you're free to do the practice, not interfered by your laziness or excuses or other distractions. And a lot of people are not free from their laziness, not free from their other worldly activities. Sure, the worldly activities shouldn't be put down as worldly, but so much worldly activity is never finishable by doing. And they're nevertheless not free because they're more committed to do that. And so here we are reading through the Udanavarga, which is a collection of deliberate statement by the Buddha, compiled together around 3rd century, and then of course committed to in the texts, and then translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan. So it sits very comfortably in the danger section of the teachings. So it has 33 I would say topics, and we have covered the first 3. The first 3 were on impermanence, desire, and craving. Now tonight's topic is a topic on heedfulness, which is a remedy to all those 2 topics we discussed last 2 weeks, because fault of the desire and craving was mentioned very clearly. And so this particular topic tonight is a remedy, how to remedy those craving and desire. Because when we're saying that people are not free, means they're desiring something, and so because of that they're not free to be doing things that they really need to do. So the heedfulness. So the 4th topic is heedfulness, Some people may translate that as caution, and cautioning oneself, but I'll translate it as a heedfulness, pakya. What I'll do is tonight is, because it's a chapter on heedfulness, it's good to heedfully reflect what we hear and contemplate. So as I've been reading the Tibetan verses as well, what I'll do is I'll explain maybe half a dozen verses in English, then pause there, and you can reflect on that while I can read those 6 verses or so in Tibetan. So this first verse, because when you see this verse, the heedfulness is place of freedom from death. Heedlessness is death. For the heedful, there is no death. For the heedless, there's always death. This actually is quoted as Nagarjuna saying in Nagarjuna's friendly letter to a friend. There is this verse, but you can see this is the way it was copied. So it actually comes from Buddha, and Nagarjuna's writing is maybe paraphrased a little bit, but actually exactly that. So when it says heedfulness is free of death, meaning when we are heedful, means very, very attentive. We're completely cautiously keeping our mind attentive with the thing. It's like in meditation, we try to stay with the thing. When we are really heedful to in our thoughts, in our perception, in what we say or do or think, and emotionalize, when we are very heedful, then we are free of death, meaning then there is no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no lapse of conscience, there is no danger of us doing something harmful and destructive, because there's no death, there's alive. One is alive, basically. One is truly alive when we are heedful. Heedlessness is death, where when one is absent of that heedfulness and carefulness, then one thinks bad things, harmful things, believes harmful things, and then basically it's like a death. It's not even living, Person might be very much on the job, but it's like death. What they're doing is completely similar to death, or causing death themselves. And so therefore, having said the true statement, for the heedful, there is no death. Even at the moment of death, physical death, there is no real death. For he will be completely aware of the nature of death, nature of, may I say, when you're aging, you will not be suffering from aging. You will losing loved one. You will not be feeling end of the world and feeling really angry or sad or depressed. You would not. For the heedful, there will be no such a defeat, because he knows it happens to everyone. So he doesn't think it's why me, my sister, my brother, my uncle dying, and one doesn't think like that. If one who thinks like that is a death, because he's heedless. He's not aware that many people lost their mother and father when they barely were able to walk and crawl. At least one's parent has lived many years. So a heedful person knows that, and therefore do not mourn and groan and then carry on. And for them, they will do what is necessary, culturally, religious, necessary for the death, and the rituals and ceremonies, prayers to the dead. They will be more focused on that, so they don't act as though they are dead. They will act as they are really able to, that there is no great defeat. For the heedless, there is always death. Always death. Not only when there's somebody died, but 2 years later, they're still mourning and drawn. So it's not just then when they lost somebody, but still since 2 years after, 5 years after, something happened 10 years ago, they still are thinking like that because they're heedless. So the heedfulness, see them as impermanent, and they're not desiring what is undesirable. They see the impermanent as impermanent. They're not holding on to something that's not there as if there is. So there's no death. Even if they lost the thing, they are not suffering. So very great kind of teaching basically, even mindfulness is basically like that, you know, mindfulness, just staying mind, like keeping the mind as if we have the mind in our hand, and then knowing things for what it is, rather than holding something what isn't as what it is, and then making oneself a cause, you know, repeated death, basically repeated death. Seeing their difference, the second verse, seeing their difference, the wise remains heedful. So the wise knows the difference between these two, heedfulness and heedlessness. One is death and other is immortality, basically. One is deathlessness, one is death always. So that's why wise and fool are distinguished by that. Wise see the difference and remains completely heedful, you know, always heedful. Whereas foolish will remain heedlessly and then suffers and continue to suffer. There's no one suffering. They make the suffering long. Not just then it was death, but then ever since then it was death. Continuously, heedlessly, they continue to suffer. So the purpose of this verse being stated is suggestion, try to be wise, to remain, to know what is the benefit of being heedful. So heedful meaning even if some bad thing happened today, but you think one who's wise remain heedful is, this is not going to last long. You know, tomorrow would be different. This will be over, and I can just focus on. See, he's not dead. He's not defeated by that. He's completely over it. So the wise remains heedful. That these things happen, but that's not the end of the thing. What's next, so to speak? And being free, being very fond of heedfulness. Now the wise is very fond of heedfulness. You know, you can see that we are sort of very fond of heedfulness. Buddhism is all about heedfulness. You know, heedfulism is Buddhism. Heedfulism is Buddhism. And they are delighted by the conduct of the noble ones. See, that's why we pray the name, call the names of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, lineage gurus. When we do this, we delighted how each and every one of them gave the time and life to cultivate that themselves and pass these teaching down to us. We are ever grateful, and you can have any kind of inheritance from your loved ones and from this and from uncle and mother and father. Even they were really millionaires or wealthy, they gave. But just this not the most valuable thing is this ability to teach the skill how to mind our mind, you know. And therefore we are delighted. We're delighted. We're filled with joy to think of Dharma. It's not that we are new and we don't know much. We know that the more we pay attention to it, that much it will double our delight and graciousness. It will increase our capacity to practice deathlessness in very awkward situations. We see the teachings empowering us there because we have paid heed to the teachings. We're delighted by this knowledge. We almost like we just pack that our lunch for life, so to speak, you know. and so we always have this heedfulness in us. Even good things we see, the difficult things also, we really responded in a deathlessly. That is what we're talking about. So even you said lost your wallet or whatever, you just don't think it's the end of the world. You heedful ones, instead of making it a death, he will make it into birth. Let the person who found my wallet be happy. And poor thing is there's not much cash in there. Let him be happy. I can cancel my whatever the cards are. No problem. See? There's no death there. There's no big upset there. Because it was not ours anyway, all those cards were sent to us. So we can always get it. They can always send you another one, new one. It doesn't even take 3 days. Version 1. So there's not really great drama. When you are mindful, when you're heedful, there is no need to do any of the childish reaction things, because you are delighted by these teachings, and that teaching is still, you're remembering. You remember why you're heedful, There's no death. There's no death of the memory either. Thank you very much. Usually, heedful ones don't forget one. Heedless one forget very quickly. Constantly, number 3, constantly meditating on these issues. The virtue of heedfulness. Meditating meaning constantly being with this amazing idea. Meditating meaning being with that thought, with that philosophy, with that idea, and remaining stable to suppress the other. Suppress the other meaning whatever are the causes, the condition that is instigating the negativities or whatever. It's being able to suppress, meaning being able to overcome those obstacles, those negativities, those adversities. Because that's what mindful is. The mindfulness is not mindfulness without the obstacles is pretty dull and boring. Mindfulness with the obstacles, with the adversities, with the difficulties, then you can see whether your heedfulness really can be switch on, see whether you are mindful or not. In the Lojong says that there's it's like a person who gets thrown away by the horse when he's riding. He quickly gets up and rides again. That's what we're talking about. You have to be a pretty good rider. You shouldn't be falling down, but just in case you did fall down, it doesn't take long for you to mount again. As if not blaming the horse or other things, like that. You can suppress whatever the problem is. The steadfast is successful and blissful. This person who is heedful is usually successful in conquering his own neurosis and negativities, and hence he doesn't have to waste time in conquering external ones. Therefore, he is blissful and reaches unsurpassable nirvana. Yeah, person who is able to do that, he or she is already absence of sorrow. Nirvana means absence of sorrow. It doesn't mean a long climb. It's not a steep climb. It's just an absence of sorrow and anger and doubts and all the cardinal afflictions. There's none of those taking your mind. Blissful means absence of these 5 afflictions. Then there is no sorrow. No sorrow. So that's really what we call the heedfulness. Number 4, when the wise conquers heedlessness with heedfulness, having ascended to the citadel of wisdom, devoid of sorrow, they are affectionate. I mean, the wise are wise, firstly, to stay themselves to be heedful, because heedfulness, is conquers heedlessness, and then they are able to ride up, climb up to the citadel of wisdom. They actually have now the wisdom of practicing heedfulness, and therefore their mind is absence of anger or sorrow or hurt or pain or jealousy or self-doubt. None. This is devoid of sorrow, it's called. And so then they are able to be loving. Then they're able to practice kindness. Then they're able to practice compassion, because their mind hasn't been lost to heedlessness. Because of that, they have the wisdom too. And therefore only those who have wisdom can practice love. Those who don't, they practice attachment. They think it's love, But their love becomes attachment, and their attachment becomes cause of death. And then they have a complete loss of capital. I wish I didn't love this person. They say that. I wish I didn't help this person. See? Yeah, they were dead then, they're dead now. But the person who has wisdom don't suffer from such, because he is devoid of sorrow caused by none other than one's affliction. Sorrow isn't a sad story. Sorrow is the unconscionable doing of one's own mind that is negatively, so that allowing the defilements to devour ourselves. That is the sorrow. Sorrow is caused by, truth of suffering says, the origin of this truth of suffering is one's own ignorance and desire and craving, as we were reading last 2 chapters, craving and sorrow due to ignorance and so on. And so now one has wisdom to know that, and hence no need to revisit any sorrow, And hence you are now able to practice loving kindness to those who fail, who don't have these things. And so we become even more enchanted to practice loving kindness to those who don't, who are heedless, who are whatever they do. It's not because they wanted to do, they don't even know they're doing. They are not with their mind. And so they have to be cared for, they have to be attended to. We have to show our sympathy, empathy, and affection. We can. Not that we have to obligatorily. It's a natural thing to do. it's just like the most reasonable thing to do. It's because of that. So it's not really big, tall order. It doesn't come as a tall order. It's not like, it doesn't become too much and ask for you. Dwelling on the summit. Remember, I talked about going to the citadel of wisdom. So now you're dwelling on the summit. Summit means you reach very high ground, and from where you can see everything very clearly. So now you can see your mind. The stable ones. The stable ones is usually staviras. Staviras are stable. Stavira means established in the stability. So there's practitioners very good, maybe very strongly predisposed to enter into the streams. Survey the plight of the childish on the ground below. So they're on the higher ground, and they can see all sentient beings how they are struggling on the ground and on the lower slopes and sliding down and trying to climb up and so on. You can really survey the plight of these children with diligence, heedfulness, good discipline, and peacefulness. This is where the heedful one now can practice all these things. He has a really strong degree of diligence, which is joy in what he has to do. It's not a chore. It's not that he have to do, but he want to do. It's the only thing to do. Was there anything so important to do? When one is on the summit, you can see very clearly, because of that extraordinary sight from which you have the advantage of seeing things very clearly from the summit, then you're very, very heedful. And you know that how sentient beings are very not cooperative and because of that, one is very good discipline how to exercise certain restraint with certain situations. And then even if they're reacting negatively, we remain peaceful, not agitated. Turning into the realm of the wise. Now this meaning you are number 6, realm of the wise, because if you can switch your mind to go higher, and realm of the wise is the mind which see with great kindness, compassion, the great river is repelled. Sentient beings are drowned in the river of sorrow and karma they are creating, So now one is able to repel the river, because cross the river, cut the river. Those with the disciplined mindfulness have pure conduct and react thoughtfully. So it's not so much other people makes to something to do negative, but one actually react in a way with that good conduct, one can repel the river, not letting it to even touch you, let alone drown you. So that's the practice of virtue of heedfulness. So these 6 verses we have gone through. Now I will chant through the 6 verses of that. Bāyō chime ne yente, bāme bāne chive ne, bāyō chivar mingyurte, bāme bāne taktu chi. Te kepar te rikpe, kepa namne baktam den, 바유 빨라 랍가와 박배 조율 가와인 델라준도 곰바당 딱도 바로 는 템베 주데 라메베 냥엔델라 레바인 강zen 케베 바유베 밤에 좀바 대이체 샤랍 항상 땡zeg네 냥에메베 동제당 땡나르고 보달라 사팅 지반 남라다 전주 당의 바유당 양다 dom당 들바이 케베 링드 제네는 주어첨부 원도도 전주 대신 전바당 저바 장신 다는 제바당 So, now the fame of those with such heedfulness and with their pure discipline and the right livelihood, heedful will spread and influence ripple effect around those. One should be heedful of sincerity and trained to have foundation of the sage. Meaning sage here refers to Shakyamuni Buddha, because Shakyamuni himself also started very, very humble and slowly built these qualities, resorted to pure discipline, prohibitive discipline, encouraging discipline, benevolent discipline. So these three, one went through first prohibiting things, then encouraging to do good things, help maximizing, then benevolent discipline. So, because when one is merely observing prohibitive discipline, it does not necessarily benefit others. One might even think that one is missing out some benefit. So moving from prohibitive discipline to encouraging discipline, meaning wholesome discipline, and then wholesome, those perceived by others are wholesome, but to turn the wholesomeness and prohibited discipline into what you call benevolent discipline and helping others. Your discipline has a huge effect on it. Like the Dharma and its respect and preciousness we think today is because Buddha's these three disciplines. He succeeded, accomplished, and realized these three disciplines. So the Buddha Dharma is the embodiment of benevolent discipline. Dharma is benevolent, Dharma is medicine, because it is the practice the Buddha realized, accomplished. So the weight of the Dharma is the weight of the actual realization of the Buddha. That's why it's talking about the pure discipline. And pure discipline of what? Observing right livelihood. Yeah. Buddha left the not so right way of living as a king in power, possession, and position, and influence, luxury, comfort. All those things seem completely unright when millions are dying in starvation, in famine, in poverty, in illness and pestilence and so on. How could one as the king continue to live in such a luxury? And when age pension gets like about $4 or something per meal, our parliaments get $180 a day. So like that huge discrepancy between the livelihood and allowance, Buddha did not feel comfortable being in the position that he was. He therefore discarded that livelihood as a king, livelihood of a king. So adopted right livelihood of simplicity as a mendicant. Heedful will spread. Yeah, he's adopting that kind of way of life, then spread spread and expanded that practice of simplicity and simplicity and homelessness to thousands of people, not just then, even more after then, more and more after then, but even more when it spread to many other countries. Even today, there's millions of practitioners as honoring the practice. Even if it's temporarily, they all practice just one rainy season retreat. And these things are this pure discipline of the Buddha and the benefit it has to the mind life and society that it has spread, not because it was missionized or something like that. One should be heedful of the sincerity. Therefore, we should see that teaching really starts and finishes with that. And it's all about one's own mindfulness. It's not about someone doing these things and we become so inspired and that will help us. Temporarily it might be that will ignite our interest or something. Deep down, we have to have our own practice of heedfulness to stay with us. One should be therefore heedful and trained to have the foundation. The Buddha practiced as the foundation of when he adopted the path of the sagehood. Always possessing utmost peace is the solace free of sorrow. So one who has heedfulness has these possessing that utmost peacefulness, tranquility, untroubledness of troubled state of mind, is the solace free of sorrow. Solace meaning peaceful. There is no sorrow. So when the person has no sorrow due to the five affliction, they don't complain, they have nothing negatively to say or about others or even themselves or anything really. They just nothing to say, no comment. Just being able to stay silent is a sage quality of a sage. No resorting to low practices, nor one should adhere to be heedless. Do not cherish wrong views. No worldly deeds will increase. One does not cherish wrong views. And so because of that, one is less likely to take up worldly deeds, let alone increase the worldly deeds. Anyone whosoever is great possesses the right views. So that through the heedfulness, he will acquire right view, to let go, to move on, and not resort to greed and craving we're talking about, and resort to simplicity and contentment and so on. And then one actually see how proper it is, how useful it is to have the contentment and so on. Because of that, the practitioner is now developing right view. He will not fall in the lower realms. The one who has heedfulness, sometimes we hear the teaching as if someone going to rescue you, someone going to prevent you from going there if you pray to them or something like that. That is one way of teaching. But here the correct way of teaching is those who are heedful in their everyday life will not need to be frightened by the lower realms, because you won't even go there. So you don't have to think what you're not going to get. So he will not fall in the lower realms. Amazing sort of confident statement that you will not fall in lower realms. Instead of saying those who don't believe me shall be sent to the lower realms, it's good to say I have a technique how not to go down there. It's so completely positively predisposing the teachings. You will not go to lower realms even in 1,000 lifetimes. Not just one lifetime, 1,000 lifetimes you will never go to lower realms, because you have heedfulness. He who engages in the heedless acts, the childish has lost his mind. So the difference is, one who is heedful will never go to lower realms, and one who engages in the act, he has lost his mind. So maybe his life is human rebirth, precious, but who cares? He's completely lost his mind, and one who has lost mind usually act in a way that that is completely harmful. That's harmful, not just one level, but harm even more on a more bigger level, because he has lost his mind. Just as the shopkeeper guards his goods, the wise should conduct heedfully. Shopkeeper's goods is his goods. The wise person's goods is his mind. He mind his mind. Shopkeeper is always his things. He's a slave to the things. Do not engage in heedless acts. Do not be free to indulge in desire. So this is going again, exactly is talking about that this chapter is about as remedying the faults of desire and craving that was read in the previous topics that we went through. So let me read those in Tibetan, verse number 7 onwards. 양다 넘당 쉐기 조와당 바여 남기 작박 몸바를 펠 락베 셈라 박자데 두베 두시 남래라 녀시 딱도 전된베 겨원양에 매바인 멤베 쳬라 미덴징 밤에 발라 데메자 로바르 달란 데메당 직된 파바 미자오 직된 바에 양다다 첨보술라 여기르바 데네 세랍동도양 년로로 민주로스 밤에 발라 조르제바 끼워시바 삼라 인스 총도 너남 송와다 케베 바단 덴버자 밤에 발라 미조신 더라가와 미조당 He who always conduct heedfully will gain freedom from downfalls. Meaning, when one is start to become heedful, past is past. But once one has become heedful, and then one will no longer will falling, committing downfalls. He will be free. The danger of him or her committing downfalls, whatever fails themselves, whatever brings themselves down, will not be repeated. Maybe the person has done a number of wrong things in the past, but once he takes up the heedfulness, it has completely corrected himself. The chances of them repeating the downfall is not nil. He will be free from the downfalls. That's what the Dharma is. It completely restores person's spirit and heart and conscience. Not just outside physical behavior, not just outside verbal, but his attitude also is completely no longer danger of thinking, resorting anger and resentment. He already saw the past mistakes of anger, of greed, of miserliness, of non-generosity. Now he knows that. Now he's in danger. He says, if I'm only going to make a second chance to develop, I will cast them off. Even if freedom from downfalls is not entirely obtained, one should not be one should not be heedful. One should not be heedless at this time. Yeah, heedless at this time. Like the lioness among the beasts, all those who are careless will be killed. Careless people who goes after someone else's will be temporarily beset by four things. So it's talking about lioness get killed like the other, and unlike the other beasts, and likewise careless person who is coveting other things, whatever their things they are coveting or desiring or wanting, and they will be beset by these four things. The four things will bring them down. What are they? They gain no merit, meaning they're beset by lack of merit, because when they're craving more, when they're desiring and when they're coveting and when they're wanting, and then they're completely killed. They are totally destroyed. So that's beset by lack of merit. Lack of merit means he's got so much, but no contentment. He's got so much, but he does not even help anybody or himself or others. And so therefore, again, there's no merit in the thing that the person has. The first one, he does not sleep well. Personally, it's very, very besetting. Just a person can't even sleep well. Yeah, biologically, everybody needs sleep, you know. It doesn't mean that you have to sleep because it's a law or something. The body necessarily needs sleep, but the person who is beset by these negativities don't even know how to sleep, and his body is completely worked up by the sleeplessness, and then they get tired and fatigued when you really need to pay attention to. When one is sleeping, one is entertaining and hosting negative thoughts, hosting a lot of thought parties, and one just gets caught up. So that's the second. Third is being despised. Yeah, one person who is like that, people will say, oh yeah, he's like that, or she's like that, and they will not look up to you. They will not see any good in us, because they will instead despise. They will not count on us. They'll just almost denigrate or overlook and ignore, because we're not countable. We haven't lifted anything to make them feel we are. And so they will oneself become despised. Just being despised is very difficult for most people to cope, And unless you have some merit, the people who have merit shouldn't be despised. People who have no merit are despised. If the few people who have merit get despised for some reason, it's good for them. It's good for them. They don't get affected by the despising. It actually checks whether we got any merit or not. They thought they have got some merit. And when they get despised, and then see whether they got the merit or not. You see? Otherwise, you can't say, I have got merit, or this is some kind of badges or some coins or something you can show. Some people got things that tie on the chest to show they got merit in some military or something. In Dharma practice, merit, again, the respect, the humility, the fear of anger, fear of negative consequences. This is the merit. This is the merit. So without merit, they go wrong way. They go without merit. The fourth is they being despised. The fourth is they become hell. They just become like hell. They don't have to go to hell. They just become so paranoid, so restless, so unhappy, so discontented, so childish. They become like hell. So when one is coveting, desiring, and eyeing on things, and they are constantly thinking of that, without merit, they go wrong way. Fear and worry accompany little bliss. And the fear and worry people have does not allow the person to have joy or contentment or restfulness or humility. It doesn't allow them. It just completely beset them. That's the whole thing. They completely lose themselves to this. Sentenced with heavy penalty by the king. They're hanged and boiled in the hell. Yeah, so their anger has his sentence themselves, the heavy karma of as if you are being hanged or boiled, if you talk about hells. But the people who are in seething anger is already boiled, you don't even need to get inside a cauldron. You don't even have to be hanged. You're hanged by the resentment. Usually to be hanged, you have to get arrested by some people, and then finally they discover you and bring to the place or whatever. No, this is wherever anger is, it'll hang you there. So those who cherish personal happiness should act heedfully as it is taught about. Yeah. So if you really wanted to have a reasonable happiness, even happiness is a result of predisposing meritoriously. Yeah, if you think meritoriously, then even if somebody is beating you, or even somebody is putting you on a cauldron, then still it wouldn't be so painful. It wouldn't be so difficult. Someone got to go in there, so to occupy this person. As long as the others are not having to go, it's okay, It's like you wouldn't mind going there, because it actually stops somebody else being tortured in that way. So steadfast should not become like an infant's cart and meander off, When, for example, the infant's cart turns from the well-maintained road, yeah, instead of staying on the road, it goes, and then, yeah, it's already pretty clumsy, pretty flimsy. Those kids tricycle or whatever. It's maybe okay on a very smooth background or veranda or somewhere, or even main road. But if it goes to other parts of the road, onto rough edges of the road, the axle breaks, it becomes sad. Likewise, childish who give up Dharma and engage in Dharma deeds will fall beneath the power of death, like the axle broken into pieces, those who have given up the work and do all that ought not to be done. It's talking about the heaviness of the consequences. Tautu payo semjeba sakpa seba topringyu. Sakpa seba matopyan tundir pame mijates. Rida mai singatar pame pada separachyo. Pame paro pome tenjepe migayin la negam dishin jung. Sonam metal deva minyalda. Sumba menju shiva nyawaranyu. Sonam mado dikpen rovatan jikdan paza lenjik devachum. Gyawe cheba chenbu jyoshin lushik semje nyawa namsutse. Ganshi dagda landoba tenne koma hinduja. Shibe ta shibe shingda shinjuwe tenbe zunju shenmija. Pena shibe shingda lamchen sangbo bonesu lamngen dagdun rojeba mikcha semgon chubada deshin chöne banega chömen jisun jugjibe. Chömen jisun jugjibe. Chiba chida wan roshin mikcha hindu chombado. Kanshi chiba nambane mijawada jebada. So, talking about one who has given up the work and do all what given up the Dharma work, given up the good meritorious work, casting away one's spiritual activities or good deeds, as if this is a burden or this is too much or this has got meaning, I don't believe in this type of thing. Do all that ought to be done. Then they are free to do everything what is not ought to be done. And are arrogant in their carelessness. Even they do harmful things, they still think they're smart or something. They're good at whatever worldly things. They're good at shooting darts. They think they're very good because they're arrogant in their carelessness. They think it's a skill. They think they need some recognition. Their downfall will increase. With that, one day they will not be shooting darts. They will be shooting somebody. So what is their skill was for? And where does those marksmen comes from? usually those people who have been trained in shooting and they actually take up those jobs. So that's what they end up doing. So arrogant in such careless activities, harmful activities, and one actually end up doing just that. Those whose contamination has increased recede from the uncontaminated. This is really talking about how oneself becomes goes down from bad to worse once one has lost that carefulness or heedfulness. Those who are mindful of with their body always undertake what is good. Meaning those who are mindful of the preciousness of the body, fragility of the body, how volatile it is to contract an illness, get sick, lose energy or whatever very quickly. If we are not mindful of what we're doing with, by, to, against this body. And a lot of the completely mindlessness of the body. So that's why we sit and meditate. Try to practice mindfulness body. Try to sit and emulate the 7-point posture of Vairochana Buddha. Just stay with the posture, keep the feet across, back straight, and hands on the lap or prayer position, and eyes not looking hither and thither, but focused straight in the front, and keep a very good composure. And when one is mindful with the body, always undertake what is good, because they do that formally in prayer and meditation and study. Then outside the study and training and meditation, then they are able to attend doing good. whatever they do it very well. They do it with the right attitude. They undertake what is good. They leave a very good impression. It might be fairly ordinary chores, but they do it with such grace. Restraining what ought not to be done, constantly doing the work. He or she is completely, naturally have the habit and merit to exercise restraint. He's not free to do any of the wrongdoings. He's not go to those places. He does not accompany those places or people. He doesn't have the motivation. He's not free for full stop. That's very good. He's not free to go to or with or because he's mindfully sitting in his meditation or mindfully doing his useful task, useful duties that need to be done and had to be done. And instead of thinking it's too much, he doesn't think like this. It's delighted by the doing. It's amazing. You see, this is what it is, mindfulness is. Just do your bit. And we're happy to do that. It's not comparing whether people are doing or didn't do or helping. That's their thing to do, And I'm sure they will pick up. They see us doing it all the time, regularly. Maybe we aren't quite able to influence this. There's so few of us. We can't influence so many people. But once you are able to be mindful of the body and do what is good, don't eat unhealthy things, don't eat or drink harmful things, don't go to places and engage in activities, conduct, even though it looks like what looks like a really pleasurable. But if one knows how to exercise restraint, then you will be always available to do what ought to be done. Those who possess mindfulness and introspection will exhaust contamination. All are contaminated, meaning the mind that is contaminated by, desire, greed, or laziness, or excuses, or whatever they want. Now one will slowly curtail them, exhaust them. He said, this is way too much. I've been nursing these things so long, and life is too short. And because he's heedful, he knows that there's not a lot of time. He's mindful of his age. He's mindful of fragility of the body. He's introspective that he's got not much time left. Because of that, he will have to exhaust and stop those temporary contamination of the mind while one still has some mind and energy and karma in this body, which is very well gifted form of body. Because of that, he will exhaust. Those who have exhausted the contamination will gain freedom from them. So then one does not spend a lot of time in anger. It's not unnatural to have a little bit of upset, but you don't dwell long. You can shorter quickly. You say, come on, my dear, don't do it. Okay, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. So there's no more. And you're straight away free. You're not contaminated hour after hour or day after day. No, because you are expose yourself to the Dharma that you read, then you reflect, you remember. And then when you remember the Buddha, it's amazing, beautiful. You remember the Dharma, it's even more beautiful. If you remember how to apply to unseat the contamination, it's easy. That's the very purpose. Buddha said, yes, yes, yes. Then the statues might not there and talk to you. Otherwise, the statues are just looking at it and it's not really happening. Then the statues pretend not seeing. No wonder not many statues speak or nod head. because they can't see anybody doing very much. The Joe Shakyamuni in Lhasa has spoken a number of times and nodded his head, so to speak. Yeah, so one will be able to exhaust incrementally, slowly. Certain afflictions are now recognized. Now, non-recognition is exhausted and recognition is installed. Very good. Now, recognition is installed, interrupting their frequency is installed. So what one has exhausted, non-interruptibility is now exhausted. Now one can interrupt it. Frequency of it, duration of it, that's what they call exhaustive contamination. Gain freedom from those. Those who talk too much do not behold holy Dharma. So this is talking about if one is mindful in everyday life situation, one doesn't spend a lot of time talking, because if he does, he definitely doesn't see the Dharma. Do not hold holy Dharma. Even those who heard just a little properly conduct Dharma physically, So even those who have heard Dharma a little, you can see Dharma person are much more thoughtful and kinder and non-aggressive and non-violent. You can see how much the Dharma tames the person. They have completely softened the person's approach. Even when he opens the door, even when he closes something, even when he does something, there's a bit of a gentleness with his does. There's some kind of grace, grace when the person conduct, because he has heedfulness. They say that, how should Shantideva talks about in the chapter on, his chapter is conscientiousness, which is heedfulness, very long chapter. God, a lot of these are all in there. Well, how one should do things, and to take it, just being thoughtfully, doing thoughtfully, but really, with great care and respect and gentleness, what one does, and take heed of the teaching, hold the holy Dharma. So one is heedful of the teaching, they retain the teachings. They'll attain the realization of the truthfulness of the teaching, not just believing the teachings, but actually realize them and then really possess them. Some people know it, but then don't possess it. Other people not only know it, they actually possess, as they have been just beautifully saturated by the teaching. And there is some kind of tameness in the person, because the Dharma has completely, even they heard just a little, and a person conducts in a way that it seems so gracious, so kindly, so mindful, so unaggressive, so timely, so careful. You can see the touch of dignity. And take heed of the teaching, hold the Dharma. Although he may talk much that's true, like cowherds counting someone else's cattle. So a person who have heard little, that's what I'm saying. Person who have heard little, although they may talk much that's true, but because they know so little, they talk too much, he says. Like cowherds counting someone else's cattle. He doesn't have his own. The heedless, not practicing what they understand, will not gain the fair share of the merit. So, although they may talk but little of the truth, those who practice what the doctrine says, and abandon desire and hatred and ignorance, they'll gain their fair share of merit by singing the praise of heedfulness and always criticizing heedlessness. Heedfulness is more important than 100 offerings to the gods. Whether the work is done or not, the wise sing in praise of heedfulness. Now that's even those things you do, offerings or something, it's actually it's a tool to cultivate heedfulness. It's not the Buddhas and will drink all those offerings or eat those offerings or rejoice their flowers or whatever. It's just to plant mindfulness. The Japanese flower arrangement definitely was heedfulness practices. You can see they came from the Buddha Dharma, and for restless people who are not heedful, they are allowed to give these people. And how they do things in Japan definitely has a touch of the Dharma in action. How well mannered those people are. They may not cognitively know Dharma, but there's some kind of heedfulness, gentleness with that people. It's not quite, quite uniformly all Japanese are like that. Maybe even doing some harmful things, they do very well. So when they get misdirected, of course, but otherwise, it's such a tiny island nation, almost third economy in the world. Where did they get that from? Some discipline come from, some very little crime, I'm told, in comparison to the population and so on. And of course, there are. It's still in samsara, and then majority people don't know dharma and so on. They got general problem, but when you really look at overall, the culture of people are somewhat tamed by the widespread practice of dharma. Lamngen Dawdun Rojebe, Mikcha Simjen Konjuba, Deshin Chune Bangnijan, Chuminjuzun Jukjibi. Shiba Chida Wang Roshin, Mikcha Hindu Jombato, Kanshi Chawa Nambane, Mijawada Chepata. Pame Baye Lomjiba, Teda Namji Sakba Pe. Kangi Sakba Pejuba, Dei Same Yangmana. Kanshi Ludo Tembata, Takdo Likper Zambata, Chawa Mai Mijijin, Gundu Chawa Chepata. Temba Shishin Dembate, Sapa namne separanju. Kangi sapa sejuba, tene same toparanju. Chiza mandu majeba, teda tamjun zimayis. Kanda dinayin tönyoya, Luki Choedak ngosumche. Kanda chola pajeba, teda tamjun zimbayi. Kaderiji mandu ji megyane, bame teda chimanju. Pena chukzi hengi chukjandar, tela gejon kawa tomayi. 가데릭지 뇽도 맞으자 추기 예수 줘라 줘바당. So when one gains heedfulness, one gradually abandons desire. And of course, desire will not disappear totally. The desire to do harmful things slowly decreases. Desire to do good deeds slowly takes over. Hence, because of that, one has less hatred, because hatred only comes doing bad things. And even sometimes when good things, one may be a little bit short-tempered, but it's not for wrong reason. Sometimes you could be very, very, looks like disturbed, but you're doing it for good cause. So, and then likewise ignorance, and they'll gain the merit in seeing these things. Heedfulness is more important, as I'm talking about, than hundreds of offerings. Whether the work is done or not, the wise sing praise of heedfulness. The wise and prudent ones attain two aims with complete ease. And the wise is the one who chooses the heedfulness, and the heedfulness make themselves very prudent, and then they attain two aims. They attain two aims with complete ease. What is the two aims? Aims of this life as well as aims of next life. One is not blind about future benefit, so may not see a lot of benefit now, but one knows certainly that one has attainment to know it's good for the next lifetime. So the Dharma practitioner is not so attached to immediate outcomes of benefit and praise or whatever. Even one has to wear few blames and hardships and adverse situations. He has the attainment. He has the achievement to see with complete ease, to see the long-term benefit and where the difficulties now. It's like lots of people in insurance, they're paying every week the insurance, thinking that when they have heterogeneous trouble, they will be covered. It's like that. Dharma is the highest insurance. It helps us to not worry too much. Even we are going through some setbacks now, but we are doing the right thing. We will, with that is the only way to do well, because then we're not so impatient with the difficulties now. Why? Because we know that's a necessary process we have to go through. And we are not short-sighted, we are very, very far-sighted. We are very broad-minded, like Mahayana is broad-minded. And not mind, see, this is my past life mother, or oh, this is person really needs my every help, Even I have to take a little bit of defeat or whatever. Things like that. It's amazing. Complete ease, Because if you benefit others, it automatically benefit you. Temporarily it may be hard because we are not so meritoriously geared to think that way, But people who are meritoriously geared, even temporarily is good. Of course, future definitely better. Even temporarily it burns the calorie of your negative karma, and ultimately it will be very good. So one knows in a win-win situation, just now as well as future. And also it will help to ease their karma, poor thing. We are able to contain their negative karma when we can do the remedy thing. But if we react and retaliate, then it is mutually harmful now and mutually harmful later. See? That is the complete ease they're talking about. When you have the heedfulness, you have the achievement, you have a success. You have the success of not mean-minded, not having to be mean-minded and me-mindedness. No me-mindedness or no mean-mindedness. Yes, that's right. Me-mindedness and mean-mindedness. Both are curtailed by this achievement of heedfulness. See, at the beginning it says heedfulness is blissful or deathlessness. See, now one is not defeated by the meanness. One is not defeated by, I didn't get what I want. One sees that is just a very small sacrifice. That's a small capital that you have to invest. Small premium with good return. One has such sense of mind that actually sees the big things, big things. Yeah, being able to achieve the aims of this and the next life. And it's even difficult now, one knows it's good in the next life. True steadfastness is referred to as the wise. The wise doesn't mean how tall, how big his bank balance is, how much he owns, or how much he knows. No, it's how much steadfast he is. Stable, firm, unflappable. Just really, even good things happen, doesn't get too excited. Even terrible things happen, it doesn't, think that's the end of the world. See? Why? Because he's wise. It's all temporary. Even wonderful things happen. How long will it last? So why get too excited? However long you warrant to use it, but one knows how not to ruin it in quickly. The mendicant is delighted by heedfulness and view heedlessness with fear. The mendicant don't fear people. Mendicant don't fear laurel. Mendicant don't fear, pennilessness or poverty or material things. Mendicants fear heedlessness. Heedlessness is the worst nightmare that brings all the defeats. It's like death even is brought. So mendicants go in the wild, away from all, in order to spot heedlessness and then catch it that he can pass. So he can't take up many duties because he just is there to catch heedlessness. So he has to be away from everybody. So just in case the heedlessness is in his head, it's not a thing. Because for ordinary people, the problem is out there. He fears this. But practitioner, mendicant, is afraid of his own heedlessness. He may think wrongly. He may react wrongly. He may perceive wrongly due to heedlessness, due to selfishness, due to greed, due to desire. Mendicant is very, very predisposed because he's now have the refuge, shake off all that is wrong. The mendicant. Mendicant shake off all that is wrong, like wind shakes off the leaves from trees. The mendicant is delighted by heedfulness and view heedlessness with fear. So this analogy of rescue themselves from lower realms, like elephant from the mud. The elephant which is standing in a mud pool, he knows, if he doesn't get out of there, he will sink. So because of his weight as well. And then the elephant, rescue themselves from the mud. And likewise, the heedfulness, the mendicants will rescue themselves from lower realms. Mendicants delighted by heedfulness and with view heedlessness with fear. And a mendicant is delighted by heedfulness, view heedlessness with fear. Remedy all coarse and subtle afflictions. There's no difference between afflictions. The more the subtle, more the greater care. Even the coarse afflictions have to be remedied by heedfulness. The subtle ones have to be remedied even more carefully. You may not even detect. You may not have an eye to detect recognizing the subtle afflictions. Just like burning of a fire. The mendicant is delighted by heedfulness and view heedlessness with fear. He knows the fire can catch very quickly. Fire can spread very quickly. Likewise, mendicant has to spot the small fire, like a subtle affliction. When the small fire is detected early, that's why they have smoke alarms. They don't need fire alarms. They need smoke alarms. They call fire alarm, but actually it's smoke alarm. Well, because smoke, if you can detect the smoke, there already is fire. so inferentially established that there is already. So mendicant has this eye to spot the smoke before the fire itself reaches. So the heedfulness can see the subtle affliction. If you not deal with it about now and then, next time it becomes really fully blown up anger or ill will. If one doesn't deal with it and forgive each other and let go and like that, one knows that this will become uncontainable if it's left like this. And so therefore mendicant is delighted to detect even small signs when the affliction is very, very small. He is very delighted to notice that. He's not so delighted by defeating people. He wouldn't do that. He's delighted by recognition, discovering of his own subtle afflictions, and treat them with a contempt and fear. Gradually experience the exhaustion of all afflictions. Then the mendicant practitioner is able to see the afflictions when they were non-affliction-like, and see the affliction as not something hostile. Because if one is hostile to affliction, it is affliction. So one shouldn't show hostility towards the affliction, because when the affliction themselves are not a thing in itself. It's a misunderstanding, as is the hostility. So your hostility to affliction will not remedy afflictions. So therefore, to exhaust affliction is not treat it with a negative reaction. Mendicant is therefore delighted by heedfulness and with view heedlessness with fear. Heedlessness not to react. Heedlessness to not reacting in a way that is counterproductive. He's very afraid of that. He's not so much afraid of the provocation. He's more afraid of his reaction. That he's more fearful of his own reaction and the consequences with that. Because of that, mendicant is very thoughtful, very good at details, and in unpacking the afflictions. Because there's no affliction that is really independently there. There's even fear, even say anger. They come from desire. They come from craving, which we talked about. Because of unfulfilled desire and disappointment, one is now showing this contempt to this, and so one is so vulnerable, unable to deal with that. And hence, the mendicant is more careful of viewing the fear with his own reaction that may be heedless, that may be a heedless reaction. And some non-reaction might be the most heedful thing he has to do. And that's exactly, he does. It's not a show is a sign of his weakness, but sign of his heedfulness for not reacting. With goodwill, of course. Sometimes people don't react because they're with ill will or something. But one has to not react or react with a very altruistic purposes. Then there will be a sign of slowly exhausting the strength and power of the for the afflictions. Bagdan Chingbe Kebai, Bagdan Chebe Kebai, Dunir of the Lambader, Sendi Dune Gayenda, Chime Dune Gayenda. The Tembe Tokpana, Kebai Jobai, Gelon Payo Lagashi, Pame Balan Jictaves. Dining and landed Damzalene Langenshi. Gelon Payo Lagashi, Pame Balan Jictave. Dictation Julversi, Lungin Joshi, Lomashi, Gelon Payo Lagashi, 밤에 빨라 직다베스. 군도 저와 트라범다 메이식 바 힌든로 gelon 바요 라가시 밤에 빨라 직다베. 군도 저와 군세베 림기냠수 용완주 gelon 바요 라가시 밤에 빨라 직다베. So when the mendicant who is delighted by heedfulness have a positive fear with the right object. The positive fear with heedlessness is a right fear, and the fear to the heedlessness is worthy of having positive fear. Because if you fear heedlessness, you have positive anxiety. Positive anxiety is fear of one's own afflictions. But and that would be that, and in the therefore one is now watchful to see early sign of affliction, and like the smoke will not completely degenerate because they are near to reach peace. Now, when one is so heedful and fear of heedlessness, and then there is a positive fear now. And this positive fear of heedlessness will slowly be able to develop and near the peace, which is nirvana. And because nirvana is a positive fear of attachment and so on, and then one is able to go beyond that. Those with the diligence and heedfulness conduct themselves accordingly. So you could actually see the person's maturity of behavior, whether there is a diligence, his diligence because of being lazy with detecting heedlessness. Now he's diligent to detect heedlessness. Because his diligence is to detect heedlessness and therefore doing the things he set out to do so diligently. One is when he's doing this, take up something he's doing diligently, because if he's taken up to do something diligently, heedfully, then he will know how much he's doing or not doing. If he's not doing, he obviously is heedless, is lazy or whatever. Whereas if he's doing consistently, diligently, then he's not allowing himself a freedom from what he's doing to become heedless. So diligence usually accompanies heedfulness. Diligence accompanying heedfulness it empowers the person to conduct themselves accordingly, not only properly to the Dharma, but harmlessly now and later, and to others. So he or she who's guarded by the heedfulness has a subdued, they call subdued conduct, like Vinaya conduct that is subdued, very, very contented and unagitated and non-negative and non-reactive to negativities. So there's amazing, some kind of pacified orientation with their dharmic conduct. So dharmic conduct is now seasoned by Dharma. It's completely saturated, bliss. They will remain bliss. They will remain in bliss. They show through their appearance, through their conduct, that they are in blissful. They're not disgruntled. They're not unhappy. They're not agitated. They already are in that state of bliss in this and the life beyond. Not just in this life, but even in the moment of death, any sign of death, old age, they don't make them feel sad and fearful and upset and desperate. It will not, even remember deathless. Now, even when he's approaching illness or sickness or death, all that, these things does not add to the suffering of aging, suffering of dying. It will not, because they were really, really blissful. Well, all these people, great meditators, dying in style is because this sign of death isn't impinging on them or frightening them. They're actually even more blissful. They may be the body is completely weak and so on, and they don't show any anguish in the dying process because they have attained bliss. Not just in this they lived peacefully, also in the future, even in death, when everybody is struggling, and they just show this amazing sign of a non-decomposition of the body and the amazing holy presence. Many of the ordinary faithful devotees may be able to witness themselves, some amazing phenomena of through smell and in the sight and sound and overall feeling and so on. For peace, rely upon the trainings. Yeah, this peace is not something can be given by others or reach up to a place, then you find, oh, this is peaceful. It's the training where the mind itself is not unimpeded by these afflictions and negative habits. None of the negative habits and afflictions are now able to occupy the mind. That's the training. The training is completely able to unsit this affliction, hence the peace and tranquility and contentment are now naturally manifesting. So realize that forgetfulness, heedlessness, laziness, lack of discipline, sleepiness, indolence, and distraction are the impediments to training. So if one is practicing heedfulness, one needs to see these normal, I would say, obstacles of meditation, because meditation is a heedful practice. So one should not forget, forgetfulness, heedlessness, laziness, and procrastination, lack of discipline, feeling sleepy and tired, and attached to comfort and sleep. All these things are impediments. So because if one is resorting to them, and then they're resorting to desire, for instance, they're desiring sleep, they're desiring idleness, and they're desiring to lie down. It's very easy. Lying down is very easy. It doesn't come with a lot of effort. It's almost effortlessly collapse. So these are impediments for the training. Understanding these points, you should not squander your mindfulness. Delighted with heedfulness, the mendicant possess good discipline. So the difference between, he says, don't squander your time. You should not squander your mindfulness. Therefore, be delighted by heedfulness and maintain the good discipline. and so that you don't suffer from forgetfulness and all those. With all knowing meditative equipoise, completely guard one's own mind. So it's talking about the importance of meditation. When you have a good meditative equipoise, then all these teachings that you hear and read, it just become reconfirmed, in the meditative equipoise. Then you may be not eating as much, you may be not seeing things, doing things to delight your senses, but your senses aren't craving. Your senses aren't thinking and desiring and missing and like that. There's no desire, basically. Because one's heart and mind is completely soothed by the absence of desire. Previously, we try to follow desire just to temporarily please it, and then just one get it, one wants another. This is endless. But now one has contained it. The desire has completely been tranquilized. Completely guard his mind. Remain in meditative equipoise. He doesn't want to come out of meditation. There's nothing more important than what he's doing. He was set out to do what he will do, what we had to do. And then it's not impedable by anything. Set out for work and get away. Now this is very fine. These two verses, usually written on the top of the wheel of life. Yeah? But these days you don't see them because they forget. And they should be this very, very clear, because Buddha said those two verses to go with the two. So it comes from this verse of heedfulness. Set out for work means you should go out. Don't delay. Go out, set out for work, for the benefit of others, And not be lazy, not be heedless and forgetful and so forth. And get away. Get away, get away. So act as though you have left. It's like some people punctual, they have got up and they left already. It's like that. You should set out for work and get away. Don't ring saying, I can't come today. Just set out and get away. Engage yourself in what the Buddha taught. So engage yourself what the Buddha taught. That's the highest heedfulness, really. Like elephant do to lotus pools, Like elephants that are stuck in the mud, and the elephant will just set out to get the lotus. Elephants eat the lotus, and in no time they will gone after that, They will not leave any lotus behind. They'll uproot all of them. So that's an example that we can long session. Destroy the troops of the henchmen of death. Henchmen of the death. Those who conduct themselves with heedfulness in this training of dharmic subjugation will abandon cycle of birth and put an end to suffering. So this is what is the last second verse in the Wheel of Life, is those people who conduct themselves with heedfulness to contain the three afflictions with the center of the Wheel of Life, and follow the white path that goes up, and exercise the three forms of discipline, self-restraint and encouragement, benevolent disciplines, and they become subjugated dharmically, and then they will take steps to the higher path, and they will abandon, and they'll get out of samsara, realm of samsara, and put an end to suffering. Hence the Buddha showing the finger. So those are the what we have is the 28 verses. These 28 verses on 38 verses of on the heedfulness. Nyangin detan nyewerchi yonsu nyamba misidu zunjun denji bayoda choje libur choje ba jikden detan paroltu choje baye dewa top 시질라베 템바단 조와탄 존주기 메젠 밤에단 메젠 바단 밤에단 존주 충당 군동 메 미다 뇽다 잉와데 데달라베 발제베 휴기 연라테 도바 템바추는 마센직 I'm saying do not realizing all of these, do not let your mindfulness go astray or wasted. Gelon sutim samwata 바요발라 가와이 건도 lekpari nyamhyode rangi semna jisu sung, meaning a mendicant who is fond of the mindfulness or heedfulness, having equally sort of evened out all the discursive thoughts, he will guard his own mind. And then the Tsambara Chanshi Yungwaracha, Sangye Tenlan Jukvaracha, the Mukim Nalan Jeshi, Chida Deni Shambaracha. Kanshi Chundu Dinila, Badan Dembra Jeje, Gewanko Waraban, Dungatama Shibraki. So these two verses now we have realized comes from this. Comes from this, you know. So all these things are from the Buddha. And often some people might quote some scholars, some recent scholars, but actually they come from most of the sayings and writings of fantastic Indian masters in Tibet. They were never original sayings or writings of theirs. They have just read these kind of sutras, and so they have put them together, and of course they can put in that because they have reason to quote them likewise. And even maybe during those days, those Indian teachers knew many of this by heart and quoted. And then the student who heard the teacher say this wrote down saying that's the all original teachings of the scholar. But they were actually quoting what they heard the Buddha teaching orally, isn't it? Because who can say anything that surpasses what Buddha said? Nobody. You know. So therefore, it's very important to give full credit of the teachings to the Buddha. Because when we read original texts like this, then we are able to find, you know, some of the couple of verses Shantideva or Nagarjuna wrote is all there. And the Shantideva, I think, has elaborated a bit because he was really, really amazing meditator. And then he penned them, he wrote them poetically, very nice. And quite a few of the verses, this Nagarjuna is 2nd century, Shantideva is 8th century. So these people, during those, for them, all these texts were in Sanskrit. You know, and of course, when they're writing, you know, you don't see like whole, like say, a couple of 100 verses by Shantideva. They all look like what he said. But if you look like this, actually he metered all the gist of the Dharma that he himself really, really enticed and relished and believed and meditated and realized, you know. Then of course it would be like amazing teaching because they were the Buddha's teaching and he completely seasoned it with his own understanding and realization. So people can say it's writings of Shantideva and Nagarjuna, but original thoughts and realizations are all that of the Buddha. They, of course, have to tailor the teachings to their audience and write their writing skills, which is very good because that's the whole idea of literacy. When your whole literacy of the Dharma is good, then of course you can write them so well as if they are original, and they are because most of their sayings of the Buddha, and they are so good memorized. They're understood, they meditate, they related, they just completely sealed it again and again. And so that's why, good. So in those old days, you know, like the sutras and Abhidharma and Vinayas all come in only in a big collection of a couple of 100 volumes, and most people can't get it. So it was like, you know, the whole monastery has a whole collection. Everybody was, you know, writing, copying little books of different scholars, and then they become more famous, as if these were original writings. That's why it's very careful of the Tibetan scholars not to treat any of the Indian scholars' writing as other than commentaries. You know? They're only just elucidation, clarifying, and maybe they made it a little bit much simpler, or because like this, they just like these are also collections they put together, but actually they are a collection of Buddha's sayings. You know, these days Buddha's realizations. So there we will conclude here tonight with this chapter, this fourth chapter on hatefulness.